guys, welcome back to the Atlas Hour. We got a special guest today, Justin Harris. Nice to have you on, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we always like to kind of give a little bit of an introduction to those of our listeners who may not know who you are. Maybe you can just give us a little bit of your background. Why the heck would people want to listen to you?
I don't know, to be honest. So my education background is my undergraduate is in kinesiology, exercise science. I went back later and I completed, more than 100 course hours in math and physics, but I never got a second undergraduate degree. But then I went into physics grad school, and then I ended up leaving with a master's in atomic physics. And my research was experimental atomic physics, which people wouldn't think is really related to nutrition, but nutrition is just all thermodynamics. So, it really 100%. It really is. Yeah. So that's my education background. And then as far as my business background is I own troponinnutrition.com, which I've owned for 20 years now. It's my main, coaching website. And then I own First Detachment Supplements, First Detachment 1ST detachment.com. That's what I'm most excited about right now. And then teamtroponin.com is kind of a branch off of Troponin Nutrition. It's a subscription website where we have basically, I call them the Team Troponin experts. So we have a series of experts in different fields, like Dr. Daniel Martina does physical therapy discussions related to strength training. And then David Lamartina does a lot of training stuff. I'll do a lot of the nutrition stuff, and then we'll have guest contributors.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So you've been in the game for a while and coached a lot of really big names in bodybuilding, right?
Yeah, it's the weird thing because I took a break for a while, but yeah, my first clients that weren't in person had to mail Polaroids.
Nice.
It's like 1999. Technically, there was email and stuff, but to download a photo would take forever. And so, yeah, my very, very first clients would mail me pictures. So I've been doing this a long time.
That's wild. I remember seeing videos of you and Steve Kluklo, I believe. Is that right? That was you,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. That was probably one of the funnest times of my life. We were, young. Steve was like 18. I was like 22 when we started training. By the end, I was 26 or 27, and he was like 22. We had a good 4-year run, and we just kind of created a whole career together. And actually, interestingly, my partner in First Attachment Supplements, Joe Miller, was our third training partner in that crew. And you kind of didn't see him because he had left. He ended up taking a corporate gig at Lifetime Fitness, and at one point was the COO of a telemedicine company. But he was gone by the time we did Project Super Heavyweight, so no one really knew he was our third partner. But we kind of reconnected after almost 20 years, and now we own this company together. But yeah,
that's awesome. So yeah, Steve was only 18 then, right?
At the start, yeah. So the story is, I lived in a Clinton Township, a Metro Detroit area, and I was already kind of known as for helping people with bodybuilding and nutrition. This was really early on, though. This was the Polaroid time years, basically. This is a little later. That's maybe 2002-ish. And someone had met him, and he wanted to get into bodybuilding. They said, you got to talk to this guy, Justin. So he came to my apartment. It's funny now because I was just a kid myself, 22. I just gotten married. He came and then walks this 17-year-old kid at 220 pounds with abs and these massive calves, looking like he could win a bodybuilding contest today. And he has this printout from bodybuilding.com. He says, yeah, I've been really, I want to start bodybuilding and start working out. And and he looks at his paper. I've been reading, you need to eat a lot of chicken. And I'm like, this kid, he's only doing weights with his hockey team and he doesn't know anything about nutrition, and he already could win Mr. Michigan. So he left, and I told my wife, I said, he's going to be Mr. Olympia someday. He didn't quite get there, but he's been top 3 at the Arnold several times, top 5 at the Olympia. And I think he probably could have done better, but he, focused more on the business aspect later on in his career, which I'm really proud of, because we always talked about that even when he was a kid. And when he first got his first contracts and stuff, I set him up, with a financial advisor and explain how he should set a certain amount aside. And so he's always been really business minded. And that's for me, knowing him when he was literally a kid, pre-18, seeing how well he's done with that is what's coolest to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Being able to make a living off of working out, which we all love to do anyways, like it's awesome. And not a lot of people are able to. You know, it doesn't pay very well unless you're in that top mix in like the Olympia, unless you're smart like him.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is that's the days of the Weeder contracts are gone, but there's more money in the sport than ever. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's a lot of money to go around. If you just have to hustle for it now. You have to create your niche. You don't just turn pro, look good, and get your 6-figure contract from Joe Weeder anymore. But if you know what you're doing, there's far more money than there ever was.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of brought up the age thing, and it's funny because you had seen right there, this kid looks as again to win an Olympia, and something that Josh and I talk a lot about because we see so many guys coming through Merrick who want to start, anabolics at an early age, thinking that they want to look like their favorite bodybuilder or nowadays influencer. And something I really try to impress on people is how big of a role genetics plays. And it's something that it took me years to figure out because I abused anabolics for better part of a decade without ever making anything of myself because I simply didn't have the genetics. And so, I mean, I think that's my opinion. And I wanted to kind of get your opinion on genetics and how big of a role they play when it comes to this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you even have to have the discussion because you want to have the discussion in football. If you don't play left tackle unless you're 6'8", 330, you don't pitch in the majors unless you throw 97 miles an hour, you're not a wide receiver unless you run a 4.3 40, and there's no one question that. No one thinks like, well, if I just take steroids and dribble a lot, I'll be better than LeBron James. And any other, no one thinks that about any other sport. I mean, obviously they would make you better at other sports. Like if you're a sprinter and you take them, you'll be a better sprinter. But no one thinks if they just take enough, they'll be Usain Bolt's 100-meter record. No one, it's not a thought. Like it's you don't play in the you don't play NBA unless you're an athletic behemoth. You don't play defensive end in the NFL unless you run a 4.4 40 at 6'6". It is what it is. It's not like anyone can go be Mike Tyson. You're either born with heavy hands, quick hands, or you're not. And it's the same in bodybuilding. And going back to Steve, he's a perfect example because he won both. He won the team nationals 2 years in a row as an 18-year-old and as a 19-year-old, and he was natural both times. And of course, no one believed it, because how could you look like that natural? And then, and I won't speak, like for him or what he did, but I'll just say that after he won the team nationals, he did another contest 9 months later and was 40 pounds heavier. Right. It's so, it's like, well, most people don't gain 40 pounds in 4 years or 9 years, even, let alone 9 months after already being a 2-time team national champion. But that was like his first cycle was add 40 pounds, step on stage as a 245-pound super heavyweight. I think he was still 19 even when he did that.
Yeah, it's insane. And, like I said, from a lot of times from personal experience, I've done a lot of things and never had those results ever. Didn't matter how dialed in the training and nutrition was. And then just looking at my body too, it's like, you don't have the insertions here. There's just so many things that, genetics plays a role in. So when kids are wanting to hop on this stuff and you can see like, dude, you just don't have it.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
Well, I have like the kind of a reverse version of that because I did well and I had a lot of success. I left the sport young. I was like 27 when I stopped competing and I went back to grad school. But I always, like in your mind, you want to believe that you're big and strong because you work harder and do everything more than everyone else.
Yeah.
But then I went back to school and, I didn't work out at all, went completely off everything. My testosterone was probably 0 for a while. And there was never a time I couldn't bench 315 for 4 or 5. And it was almost like, honestly, because there was at one point where I didn't enter a gym for over a year. I was doing research, just completely out of my focus. Never even a thought, and I didn't eat well. And I never went under 240 pounds. And I remember just like going to the rec center one day in my like street clothes, and I hadn't touched a weight in over a year. And I did 315 for 4 on bench. And I was, honest to God, I was kind of a little depressed because I was like, I went home, I told my wife, I was like, like, that's cool, but in my mind, like that whole time, I thought like I was just outworking everyone and I was more, detailed with my diet. But the truth is that, like I just have very thick joints, a very heavy bone structure, heavy muscular structure. And I wasn't stronger than everyone because I outworked them. I was stronger than everyone because my natural strength was that,
Yeah. Yeah. It's big. Is there any way like, a kid comes to you, can you tell in any way like this kid has the genetics to succeed or not?
Usually, yeah, not always, but usually, yeah. I mean, it's no mystery, any cornerback or running back in the NFL could probably be a pro bodybuilder, that type of body shape, like I was probably better suited for being a power lifter, but bodybuilding was really hard for me. It was very difficult to get lean. Any kid that's like naturally lean and muscular, like Dexter Jackson was a great running back. Phil Heath was obviously a really good basketball player. You can usually tell. I mean, there's some people who, like you take like a Shelby Starnes who turned pro, who had no genetic business doing that, or Dusty Hanshaw being as big as he is. There's some, like there's, obviously there's like a bell curve, there's a distribution, like a bell curve of where you are with your genetics, and like, if you can reach with enough work ethic and being precise, you can get to the far end of your bell curve, but your 2 standard deviations from the norm is someone else's norm,
Right.
So there's only so much you can do with that. But yeah, you can almost always tell. And it's hard when young kids come to me, and I have like several clients, because like you try to be somewhat honest with them, but you don't want to break anyone's heart, and you don't know also, because you never know, and like I don't want to be the one that says you can't do this. And in some ways, maybe I should, because a lot of great successes came from people being told they couldn't do it, and then that passion and that drive. But it's hard when you see some people and you just know it's, because people don't realize. I mean, I don't even have good genetics for bodybuilding, but I could jump on a cycle and be 285 inside of 3 months, and like a guy like a Chris Cormier or Victor Martinez or Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath, or Jay Cutler, like Jay Cutler's on TRT and looks how he looks right now. People don't believe that, but I guarantee he is. That's all he's doing, and probably not even training hard, and people just. Agree. You can tell. I mean, everyone knows that really muscular, lean kid in high school, and that usually like things come too easy for them and they never achieve things because of that. But if every once in a while that muscular lean kid gets bit by the iron bug, and those are your top 10 Olympias.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like Fuad's another prime example. Like him and I are pretty close, and we finally got him to start doing some TRT in a stable manner, where he was doing like 1 injection every 2 months. It was just absurd. And then he's just on TRT now, and his body's just morphing, and he's joking like, I'm a hyper responder. I'm like, dude, it's not a joke. You legitimately are a hyper responder. And that's what propelled you to that, and Josh is the same way.
Oh yeah. It's a little almost depressing it's not depressing, but like you don't want to believe that you reach where you reach because of your work ethic. And obviously you have to work hard, but no, that's the truth. I mean, any of those guys at that top pro level, they do, TRT, as long as they're eating right and training, they're going to be better than 98% of people blasting.
Yeah. I do think the work ethic comes in though too, because there's certainly a lot of people who will do the drugs and everything, but the training isn't there, and and I mean, as the nutrition, all that, like guys will say that they're dialed in and doing the work. And I'm like, I've seen your workouts, and I've seen Justin's workouts and Steve's workouts, and you guys couldn't survive one of those, so they're certainly putting in the work too. So I never want to discredit, but I think
absolutely. Yeah. And that's that bell curve. You have like your expected outcome right in the middle. And if you slack off and eat poorly and don't train very hard and take gear, but don't, you're going to be at the bottom end of that. But that's still going to, if you have genetics, that's still going to be better than most people. But you take someone like whose bell curve starts at the very, like, at like 3 standard deviations from the norm, like a Ronnie Coleman, and you have him do everything perfect. That's when you get someone who's just unbeatable,
Yeah. Do you think he really did his first Olympias natty too?
Yeah. He gained almost 100 pounds after that. Most people don't gain 100 pounds on gear.
Ever.
He competed at 304 or whatever at his peak in like 2004, and his first Olympia was like 204, or his first pro show he was like 211, like just over 200 pounds. So he gained almost 100 pounds of tissue. Most people don't gain that on gear, period. So if you're going to say he was already on a ton of gear and gained another 100 pounds after that, I think that's a bigger stretch than saying, most people, because that's taking your skinny 150-pound kid, and then they get on gear and now they're a ripped 250-pound kid. That doesn't happen very often. That's
never happens.
That's what he did. Exactly. So I think absolutely. And I know even another, going back to, I won't say too much about it because I don't want to speak, about these things for someone else, but Phil Heath did the 2005 Junior Nationals. And I had a client, Chris Perticari, who took second to him in the heavyweights. And poor Chris Perticari would have won Junior Nationals, like 9 out of 10 times, but he walked into Phil Heath. But I remember we were all sitting around a table at the athletes meeting, kind of talking to him, and he knew nothing about gear, nothing about training, nothing. And he was the talk of the show. Everyone knew, even in his street clothes, it was obvious there's no point any of us competing, and he had a little buzz from like the studios posting pictures online. But like we sat down next to him and he knew nothing. He didn't know any, and it's like, so he was, like very near Natty when he turned pro.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of clients come through, which I, won't say their names, but some of them, like Jason Khalipa is one who's been open about it. He won the CrossFit Games, and, he looks like he could have, he doesn't have the body because he's got a CrossFit body, but it's extremely muscular. It's insane. And everybody's always thrown out acquisitions of being on gear. And when you talk to him off camera, even, he's so oblivious to anything that goes into PEDs, and it's like, I don't, he's full of shit for exactly reasons like that, like Phil.
Yeah, people that say that, people say those things never like played like a Division I sport or hung out with like top level athletes. There's 14-year-old kids that could win bodybuilding contests who, that have never touched a weight. There's a kid I keep seeing around social media, like a wide receiver, and he looks like Phil Heath, shredded round muscle bellies, and he's 14. He looks like he's got 2 kids on a mortgage, but there's another, you see that 14-year-old kid that's like 294 pounds. He's going like doing a crab nose. Yeah. It's like, people don't realize, like there's 8 billion people in the world, like you take someone like an Elon Musk, like his wealth compared to, the average person's wealth. That is that same, like distribution happens for all things, for talent, for speed, like you get like a Mozart, that there's just, it's like such an extreme level that, and because most people are nowhere near that. And most people, you would never meet someone like that, unless you're in the bodybuilding industry. You don't meet people like that. Maybe if you played, if you played college football or college basketball, and you met a few people like that, but most people never come across anyone like that. Most people see the people that they hang out with who are right in the middle of the normal distribution, but go walk into Georgia's or Alabama's locker room, at any halftime, and none of those guys are on PEDs. Maybe someone, but they get tested. None of them need to be, because they're just mutants.
Right. Yeah, I'm so glad we're having you on too, because I think like I said, I definitely fell victim to it. Where when I first started, I didn't want to go down the PED route, but I was just convinced that their nutrition's better than mine, their supplementation, and this is kind of the progression of what happens. And so you watch all the full days of eating, and you mimic your favorite bodybuilder or your influencer exactly, and you still don't have the results. And then eventually I got to the point, it's just gear. That's what it is. So I start gear, and I still don't have the results. And then it's because my gear is not as good. So I get a new supplier, and then my gear is not as strong. And then I ramp up the doses, and I keep doing more and more and more.
Because you didn't try this compound, and then it's because you haven't used GH yet, and then it's because you haven't used insulin. And eventually you work. And I even encourage clients with that, because they, like young kids, they want to, like, I know what works. And so I'll tell them what works, and it's boring. Well, what works is boring. It is. It's the basic stuff, and no one, like, that's the truth. basically the some of the first compound, generally the first compounds derived are derived for a reason, because scientists aren't stupid, and so by the time you get to the 50th iteration of the 6665 carbon chain steroid, you've already weeded out the good stuff, so the stuff that was made in the beginning, the basic stuff, is what is the best. But you tell kids that, and like I don't encourage them, but I understand it. You want to know, is the grass greener? So I say, go ahead, like try higher doses. Try eventually, what happens is I'll just say, you just don't put all your eggs into the basket that the reason you haven't progressed is because of this next thing, because it's not. You're welcome to go ahead and try it, but don't just rely on that, because you're going to get 3 years down the road. You're going to finally have used GH and insulin, still look the same, and then you're going to have wasted 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah. The GH was my last kind of straw, where I'm like, it's because it hasn't had GH in the whole time. And then I remember I did maybe 2 to 4 units for a little while, and I wasn't getting these crazy. So I bumped up to 8. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going hard. Like, I've heard people talk about doing 8. I was in residency during the time and wearing scrubs all day.
Man.
So I wasn't looking at my legs, and I took off to the gym, and I went to get out, and I literally had obese ankles, like massive cankles, because I was just so full of water.
Yep.
That was the only thing I ever got from it. And I'm like, fucking A, like it's not this miracle thing. The only thing it ever really gave me was a shit ton of water retention. And, I just felt bloated and I looked fat all the time. It's literally the extent of what I got.
Because that's really that's the worst. That's like that's the least affecting of all the compounds. I mean, you're
agreed.
If you have 12 weeks to add muscle, that's the last one you're going to choose. Now, if there is only so much you can do of the other stuff. So once you've kind of hit that range, if you use GH consistently for 5 years, are you going to be larger in 5 years than if you didn't use it? Absolutely. But in any short-term period, which is really like a mind to people, because they all go into that's why you get this GH is better than that GH, or this, it's like, well, it's either the GH molecule or it's not. It's not like water doesn't hydrate you better because Dasani makes it versus Aquafina. It's either H2O or it's not. It's it's
funny.
But it's part of it's part of the sport. But if you need to make changes quickly, that's the last one to use.
100%. And yeah, I love the idea of like the early stuff. And from a safety standpoint too, people are trying SARMs and shit. I'm like, why would we do this when we have tried and true things for decades of literature with human trials on them? We've got testosterone, Decadurable, and Primable, and these have tons of literature that we can pull from, and we know the safety profiles on them. Why would we fuck around with a SARM?
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's just that weird legality of it, is that people, because there's really, in a lot of cases, pretty minimal correlation between like morality, legality, and safety. They don't. Yeah. But we associate all three of them as the same thing. If something's legal, then it must be moral and safe. When or if something's illegal, it must be immoral and unsafe. But like you said, like Primable and testosterone, that's it. That's the best. Those are all you need to do. Avoid oral so you don't blow out your liver. The Primable lowers estrogen, so you don't got to worry about that from the testosterone. It's very, it's not hepatotoxic. It doesn't raise blood pressure that much because the Primable minimizes water retention from the test. Primable is super anabolic, so you can push your doses relatively high with minimal risk. It's not a heavy androgen. It's not hard on the body. It doesn't destroy your lipid levels. And like, I've been preaching that for years, and people get mad when they sign up for it sometimes. I mean, not so much anymore because more people have kind of taken the Primobolan flag. But for 10 years ago, when I would be telling people that, they'd get mad. They'd be like, "That's what you're like. What about mint? What about?" I'm like, you could try whatever you want. I'm telling you, there's a dose response curve. It's like an S curve. Like, you don't take anything, you get nothing, and then you start taking more, and you get like a really good response. But as the doses get higher, what ends up happening is, like, when you get like higher and higher in dose, you start getting your blood pressure goes up. You can run into test flu. You'll be lethargic. You lose your appetite. So if you can't eat, you have no energy, and you have the flu, you're not going to be able to train. You're not eating. You can't grow. And so that's really the limiting thing. And so like you want to stick to compounds that push that where that range is, and the higher amount, which is like the boring, like safe injectables.
Absolutely. I used to like doing high doses of things just would make me feel awful. You literally feel toxic. And like you said, you can't eat.
Yeah.
You're sweating all night, up all night, on tren and stuff too. Like I wouldn't even be able to really train because I'd get these bouts of hypoglycemia where, I'd be all sweaty and cold and sitting down like, holy fuck. And I'm like, I just ate carbs. How's this even happening? It's just wild.
Yeah. And people like trying to convince people. It's like, so what is that doing? Like the gear's not magic. Your muscle proteins are protein, so the muscles, you like the training is just, and everything, the training and diet is you train to create the stimulus for the body to synthesize new protein structures on the muscle tissue. And that comes from the food. If you're not supplying the food and you're not supplying the training, it doesn't matter how much gear you use. And I always view it as, I like to use it like an analogy, like a building a home, and like your training is like your general contractor. He tells like we're working on siding today, or we're working on the roofing today. That's like what training we're going to do. Your training is like the general contractor where we're working, and then your nutrition is like the building supplies. Do we have enough lumber? Do we have enough nails? Do we have enough screws? Do we have enough drywall? And you make sure you have all that. Now the gear is like employees. If you have more employees, you can build the house quicker. But if you don't have a general, if you have 75 employees show up to work, there's no general contractor, and you walk into an empty field, there's no wood and nails or tools, nothing's getting built. And that's what people don't like. They just think throw more gear at the problem. And it's like, well, you already take, if you're taking any amount of gear, anything above TRT, you're all, for as far as most people's diets, you're already able to synthesize more muscle than like your diet's already the limiting factor, unless for 99% of people, because everyone trains pretty hard. Everyone at least trains, and so if you take any amount of anabolics above TRT, you're probably already way beyond. You already have more workers than you have like building supplies. But no one wants to focus on the nutrition.
The trend employees are the craziest too.
Yeah.
Especially if you have too many of those.
Yeah, they come in. They're the ones that are texting you drunk texts at 5:30 a.m. and still show up to the job site at 6:30 a.m.
Exactly. I like the nutrition thing too.
Yeah, exactly.
I posted a reel recently. There was a study where they took guys who had prostate cancer, and so they were on androgen deprivation therapy. So all of these guys had 50 nanograms of testosterone and below, and they put them on a consistent training protocol and increased their protein, and they gained something like 5 pounds of lean mass. And so they were hypogonadal, like truly hypogonadal, and were able to synthesize protein. So when people are saying that they're not making gains due to their 500 testosterone, I'm like, you're full of shit. It's because your training sucks and your nutrition sucks.
Always, yeah. And I just had blood work done not too long ago because I'm on TRT. And I still weigh, I mean, I'm not in shape. I'm fat now, but I'm still over 260, and I'm still strong. I still rep out, 365. I still squat over 405. I still pull full 495. And I was training in my basement, so it's not serious. And my diet's always pretty good. Just when you eat like meat and rice for 25 years, it's hard to it's all so it's like I don't even really think about it. But I got my blood work thinking on TRT, I was on 200 milligrams, and I'm thinking, because at the time, this was when I first was going to work with Merrick. And so at the time I was just doing my own TRT. So I was expecting to see like 1100, 1200. My test level is 396, and I like never would have known. I never would have known I was as strong as, and I was like, for me, that was actually really good because I was like that. I wonder how many, because, like you put mental roadblocks on yourself. Like if I would have known my test was under 400, I would have convinced myself I couldn't bench 400 pounds. I would have convinced myself I'm not going to be deadlifting 500 pounds. But because I thought I was walking around with a test over 1,000, I was, but yeah, that's kind of another example similar. I mean, that's not like hypogonadal, but it's not like, I shouldn't,
it's like, great.
It's not what I would expect for a 260-pound guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Josh and I both, not that I'm anything special. Josh certainly has an amazing physique, but both of us are on 100 milligrams of testosterone, 120. My testosterone last time I checked was 700, and Josh's was like 702. And both of us are able to maintain a lot of lean mass, look better than 99% of the population, with very little testosterone. So
really, you feel so much better.
Oh God!
Like I wouldn't even want to go back to cycling. I need
absolutely. We say it all the time.
Yeah, I used to have I used to think I needed so much sleep. I'm like, how to 8 hours? If I don't get 10, I feel sluggish. When I can do 5 hours and pop out of bed and bang out a day. I do it every day. I'm so much more energetic. I'm not lethargic. I don't need a nap during the day. It's I feel like like I'm a 21-year-old kid, I guess. Which like as far as hormonally, I am most of the time.
I
now
guess
that I have it correctly dosed, but.
Only thing I guess I miss sometimes is like the crazy, like in the gym wanting to rip a head off and just getting like that's fun.
Yeah. No, being like full bloated and strong, that it's only awesome in the gym, but it's very awesome when you're in the gym.
And it's mainly it's in the gym only fun on some days, because there was days too where like like a leg day actually fucking sucks because your back gets so pumped up you can't move, and half my workouts were cut short because I was just like, oh, like I'm stuck. I can't even move.
Walk out to the car, your lower back's so tight, and it's like there's no way to get to home. Like I got to get this like blood out of there, but I can't because then I got to sit in my car. So you're driving with
the car you drive like this, and I'm like on my side rotating.
And it's just burning. It's like, oh god, how many miles till I'm home?
Yes, exactly. So sometimes I feel like it kind of fucked up my workouts because like upper body, I didn't really run into that. But as soon as I got on like a leg press, lower back was done,
Leg press when you were bloated. I trained. I forgot about that because it's not like I forgot about it, but it's not in my like thought process. Right. But I train with a buddy who still cycles. I mean, this is a couple of years ago now, but we're doing leg press and I'm like, I'm doing like sets of 20 and I bang my set out, jump out. And then I can see he's like hurting, and he doesn't want to complain, but eventually he starts talking about his lower back, and I was like, all right, we'll switch to something else. And then he doesn't live in the area. He's like an executive. And so he flies a lot. And when he's in the area, we'll train together. So he was in the area several months later and he tells me, he's like, dude, he said, I was sure I was going to die that day. I didn't want to say anything, but he said that was the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I totally 100%. Forgot about that. I mean, I don't forget about it, but it's not like, it's so nice not having to worry about it.
And then when I was doing that too, I wasn't telling anybody that I was running shit. So I would have to be quiet too and be over there suffering. I'd be like, oh, my back's like really pumped. I don't know why. And then everybody's like going on about the workout.
And they think you're injured, and they're like, you should get that looked at. And like, I can't tell you why I know I don't need to get it looked at, but I know I don't need to get it looked at.
Exactly. That happened with me when I did my my first quad injection too, which was just fucked up. And I think it hit a nerve. And then I was like limping for like 5 days. And my girlfriend's like, something's wrong with you. I'm like, no, I think I just strained my quad. And she's like, this is really bad. It's all red and hot and swollen. I'm like, I don't know.
It's so funny. When I met my wife was like the exact same day that happened to me. Oh, nice. And so like the whole first week we met each other. When you when you meet your wife, like that first week, you're like madly in love, and like and she's like trying to get me to go to the hospital. And I'm like, I can't tell you why I know I don't need to, but just give me like 2 more days.
This will pass. Just give it some time.
Yeah, and she's like, I thought she's like, wow, you're fine. I was sure your leg was broken. I'm like, yeah, just finally just.
Yep, I would get that too with like knots, like in the delts or like in the glute. Like, holy shit, you got a big knot. I'm like, yeah, I think I strained it at the gym. That's why there's a massive hard nodule in there.
Yeah. Why is your one shoulder like a shoulder pad? I don't know. I think I scraped it on the wall.
Oh man, I kind of miss that too because now I feel like I have no delts. And I kind of miss having just swole delts from putting way too many cc's of shit in them all the time.
That's the one thing, because there's so many androgen receptors there too. Plus, I think like for my adults, I think there's so much scar tissue that there's actually like there's a lower level of muscle mass than there would have been otherwise. But yeah, we had people over for Memorial Day, and like someone like my mother-in-law took a picture of all the men or something, and I was standing there in a jersey, and like everywhere I'm like, man, my calves are vascular, my forearms are vascular, and then I have no delts, and I'm like, God, I really miss that. Like, look like you're walking around with shoulder pads.
Yep, I feel like that's the first thing that goes. You can kind of see like delts just disappear. Yeah,
and that's usually the easiest. And like Ronnie, going back to Ronnie, that's if you look at his shoulders, he was narrow early in his career, and he had very small rear delts, which is another one. Like anyone who's got massive rear delts, that doesn't happen naturally. and you can see, or striations through their delts. Like you look at the true natural competitors, they'll have like cross striations all through their delts because there's no scar tissue.
True. Yeah, it's super cool to have you on because, you've actually been in the space and seen, and I think, we can talk like, oh, it's genetics and the guys aren't running as much, but everybody's so convinced because, I can't say for sure, but you actually can, which is cool. I mean, I kind of
the genetic thing though, it's just so confusing to me because there's no one has that discussion about because obviously there's steroids in the Olympics and like in the field events like sprinting, but no one thinks they're going to be an Olympic sprinter if they take stuff. Obviously those guys are using stuff and it makes them faster, but no one thinks, and same with Major League Baseball. When all that, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and when all this, like the steroid scandal was going on, everyone still understood that if maybe Barry Bonds was taking stuff, but it didn't, we weren't going to be as good as him if we took stuff, It's only in bodybuilding where people just ignore the genetics.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like an ego thing, I think, probably because there's just some, I don't know, like it's hard work and grit and hardcore.
And you just don't want to, I think partly also you don't want to because if you're not on the genetic side and you're obsessed and you love the sport, it's hard to accept that, because if you get bit by that bug, and I think we've all been at least through that phase at one point where like the old famous thing where they asked the Olympic athletes if you could take a pill and you'd win a gold medal, but you die within 2 years, and 70% of them said yes. We've all had like that moment where we were like, I'd say yeah, if I could win Mr. Olympia or I could be, And so when you're in that like obsessed mode where you love bodybuilding, it's all you want to do, you're sure you're going to be a pro bodybuilder, it's hard to accept.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think I kind of fell victim to a lot of people assuming what pros were taking too. I was listening to like GH15 saying you got to take 100 milligrams of tren a day. And then we had Boston Lloyd came out and said, I know what the pros are taking and it's 3 cc's a day. And I was like, well, why would they lie? That makes sense because that's why I'm not like that. And then it wasn't until recently getting into the space, like talking to guys, that cycles don't actually seem too crazy. Is that kind of what you've seen too, where they're actually not?
Yeah. I always, kind of what I tell people is like, my general off-season approach is stick to two injectables, avoid orals. Because if you compete, you're going to do stuff, you're going to do tren, you're going to do orals. And so you don't want to go into contest prep already with, liver enzymes in the hundreds, you're not going to be healthy if you're cycling heavy, but you want to be as close to that as you can. So I say, pick testosterone as your base. And then whatever your testosterone dose is, pick your favorite anabolic injectable at about 75 to 80%. And so, like Primobolan is my preferred one. And but what ends up happening is somewhere between about 2 to 3 grams of total gear per week. And so it's not low dose. I mean, that's a lot of stuff, like that's 3 cc's like 5 days a week or something, It's not like babies, but doses. But above like somewhere between 2 to 3 grams, you start trailing off. Most people, like some people can get to about 3 grams before they really start feeling overly lethargic. They start having that test flu feeling where they feel like they have a fever and they're so inflamed and they lose their appetite. Some people it's around 2 grams, but it's always somewhere around that range. And so there's no benefit to going higher than that. And when people don't believe me, they'll, like the comments will be like, oh yeah, the pros take it 10 grams. I'll say, that's fine. I don't care if you believe me. Take 10 grams. That's fine. But you're going to find very quickly that you can't eat. You have no energy to train. All you want to do is sleep. And, if you can't train and you're not eating, the gear can't do anything. And so that's really, and sure enough, that's really where everyone kind of tops out at. It's like a gram of test, 800 milligrams of Primobolan, 1200 milligrams of test, a gram of Primobolan. Some of the really good responders, a little bit less than that. Some of the less responders that kind of have to earn it, I guess, or work harder, you'll see like 1500 milligrams of test and maybe 1200 milligrams of an anabolic. But that range, no one stays above that range really. In off season. Now, in prep, there's maybe a difference because like losing your appetite isn't such a bad thing when you're when you can't eat anyways, and then you're on so many stimulants, the lethargy is less of an issue. But for as far as like the bulk of the year and off season, that's like, and I've worked with so many people over the years, and that's where people kind of end up at. And it's rare you see more than 3 grams from a you'll see it from like people trying to, like, but it's rare you'll see like a top national guy or a pro guy above 3 grams. And most of the time it's around 2.
Yeah. So that's crazy. That's like top level mass monsters taking that amount. And so I would say 99% of the population doesn't want to look like that. They want to look like their favorite influencer who basically, just has a 6-pack and a little bit of extra mass. They probably have 17 inch
no
arms.
reason any of those people need more than 500 milligrams of test. I mean, no, it's like Chris, like Seabohm always talks about it. Like he has to barely take anything to keep his weight in the weight class, And it's,
I bet that's true too. And I think that people can probably take a while to get to that 500, which I mistakenly just jumped straight to 500. I honestly think I probably could have done like 250 at first and made some gains if my training and nutrition was good. And then next time around 350, and then waited till I got to around that 500. And then after exhausting the hell out of 500 cycles for a bit, then maybe I add in Primo or something, where, a lot of guys will jump straight to 500 tests first time around, and then they're going to do the D-ball 500 test, and then the D-ball 500 test with DECA, or
and Anadrol, and I did the exact same thing. I didn't know any bodybuilders. I did the exact same thing, and I jumped right in at too big. I did 500 tests and 400 EQ my first cycle, and I got great results. I mean, like unbelievable results. It was like, I was like, this is why people take this stuff, because I didn't even know what weight to pick to put on the bar each workout, because I got stronger so much faster. Where now looking back, I realized maybe not a hyper responder, but my response was better than most. It was immediate. It was, like because I was already strong. I'd already pulled 675. I was squatting in the 600s for, like a max. We probably squatted 495 for maybe 5 or 6. I don't really remember, but it was. I had to guess what my next weight would be for the next workout, because it would be so much stronger. A lot of times I would guess and it would be so light that I'd be like, I'll have to rack it after 3 reps and start over. But I did the same thing. And then that was like 2002 when I started. 2001, 2002, I can't even remember. I trained for 8 years without using anything. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know anyone. And there wasn't like the internet wasn't as big of a thing. So it wasn't like you could find it. If someone had offered it, I would have taken it happily, but I just never came across it. But then, and I ramped up like real quickly to the point to where I think 2003-ish, I was using more than I ever used at my biggest. And that's when I was like, had all the issues, like, I would always feel like I was sure I had the flu all the time because I had a fever, I felt like I had a fever, or I felt so achy and like I had no appetite. But like looking back, I wish I could have did it differently, but you don't have a choice now. But then basically my whole career, where I was a competitor from like 2004 to 2007, 2008, I did the same cycle the entire time. My off-season cycle was that. It was like I used EQ back then because Primobound it was harder to get stuff, but it was either like a gram of test and 800 milligrams of Primobound, and then sometimes I do 1200 in a gram, and that's from like every off season. And I was like, and it just kept working, and I was like, well, I feel like if I try to go higher, I start feeling like crap. I can't eat, so. And and then like I didn't want to go lower because I was back then I convinced myself like if you go lower, obviously you're not going to be as big, and it wasn't any like moral decision. It was just that if I took more than that, I felt like crap, and I couldn't train good, and I couldn't eat. Yeah, so it's all but I wish I could have built up to that rather than like skyrocket above it and then settle back down.
Exactly.
I was going to say, I feel like I wasted so much like potential of ramping myself up through the years. Like these are the conversations I wish I could have heard back then. And I'm kind of envious of people now that are privy to all the information and conversations like this.
Yeah, because there was nothing. Like there's so much information. Now, there's a lot of bad information now, but at least there's information. Back then there was nothing. You could because there wasn't like Amazon where you could buy like the anabolic, like William Llewellyn's book. Oh, yeah. You had to I don't remember where you'd find that, but like someone would know a place that you could order it from, and you'd mail it like an envelope in with your address. It was like the old way, because it wasn't like at Barnes and Noble, and there wasn't. I mean, Amazon I guess technically was up, but it's not like people went to. It wasn't like now where it was like one click. It was people like you'd search on Alta Vista and the webpage would take 3 minutes to load. Yeah.
And I just feel like there was like the mystique of everything still back then, even when I was really competing in, 2012 to 2016, like it just still like there was always this idea of like people are withholding information or, somebody knows something that I don't.
Yeah.
And now it kind of seems like that's gone now. And like the curtain's been pulled back a little bit.
Yeah. And I think partly because early on, you knew what the weeders told you. Like, that's all I knew, which was all wrong. Cause I told a story in like another podcast because they would just say the dumbest things because they'd exaggerate these workouts. And so I thought like every pro was squatting 600 pounds for 10, so I never knew I was strong because I never met another bodybuilder. I wasn't even a bodybuilder at the time. I never met a bodybuilder. I never met a power lifter. I trained at these little hole in the wall gyms in small towns, like racquetball courts, and my like small little college gym. And no idea, like, cause I'd be doing 405 for 20 on squats thinking it was like, God, they say the pros.
I got to get better.
Yeah. And they like tell you, like, I remember like stupid things. Like they'd say like you'll puke after a hard leg workout, that's how you know it's good leg workout. And I made a story. There's a reel up I put up but that was also the time when everyone was talking about you need your natural GH production. And so you got to train on an empty stomach. So me and my buddy would not eat for like 4 hours before a leg workout. And then we're convinced we couldn't stop our leg workout till we threw up, but there was nothing to throw up. So our remedy was to eat a can of SpaghettiOs on the way to the gym.
Nice.
Which worked, which was so stupid, but you didn't know there was nothing. You got once a month, you got the magazines. And then it was whatever, and it was really whatever Ron Harris told you because he ghost wrote everything, and there's no information on anything. And you had, like you just thought every pro did like, the workouts were crazy. It'd be like they'd list someone's workout, it'd be like 405 for 5 sets of 20 on bench. It's like, oh wow, that's what they're doing, And then finally, like the battle for Olympia started coming out in the very late 90s, early 2000s, and you could see. And I remember, like one of the first ones, and I saw it and I was like, this guy's inclining 275 and he's a pro. I had no idea. I just thought they were all like, I was sure. But that was like when I finally realized like, wow, I am doing okay. I'm stronger than I thought I was. I'm stronger than these guys in the video here. I mean, they're in prep, so it's a little bit different. But that was like where the veil finally got lifted, where I was like, oh, they're human. They're not, because the weeders presented them as like, like Sean Ray pulls up in a Lamborghini, and and they do a photo shoot with fake weights. And so every time every photo they're doing a squat with 765, in contest shape.
Yeah. With amazing form, close stance.
That's funny. Yep. No strain, bars not bending.
Yeah. I kind of miss the mystery of it though, because it's a blessing and a curse about how much it's discussed now. I feel like because I said on I think Fuad's podcast, and of course Nick Trigilli said I was full of shit. But when I started bodybuilding, I literally did not know if like Jay Cutler used steroids because all I had was bodybuilding.com and they didn't know either. Like the forums literally were like, I think he probably takes steroids. Like, and I was like, oh, you guys think he does? Like, we were talking about it on the forums. Now that sounds so stupid, but it legitimately, it was legitimately like I was starting in like 2008, 2009, and we weren't talking about it then, and then fast forward till like, I don't know, 2000, I don't know, whenever like Boston Lloyd came out is when people really started talking. Rich Piana finally started talking about it. There was that guy, Jason Blaha, who would talk about steroids and stuff. Remember him? Yeah. All those guys were like the first ones.
That's a perfect example. Jason Blaha. It's like,
shit genetics.
There's only so much you can do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What could you could never make him have the muscle bellies,
Yeah.
The dude's got an insertion like this long.
Yeah, we had no idea, like no idea. They didn't talk about it, and they would, and even worse, like in the old magazine days, they'd say, like, it's, the last 6 weeks before competition, it's, basically what was one of the quotes was like, it was basically, it gave about the same benefit as a good suntan to your look, And so I'd be like, oh, well, that's all they do, I guess.
That was in Arnold's book, I'm pretty sure. That was in one of his where he put,
Oh my God, it's like, But
see, that's kind of cool.
So it like slingshots back and forth because it goes from like that to like what Boston Lloyd said, which wasn't true either. Yeah. And I worked with Boston Lloyd as a coach. I coached him, and he didn't take what he said he took.
Yeah.
So, but it was for shock value, and it works, and it did work. He made a lot of money doing it, but it slingshots back and forth. And like everything, the truth is always somewhere in the middle.
100%. I mean, I think that it was almost good though when it was a mystery, because you got kids like you who are literally aiming to squat 700, and if they're not, they feel like they're not good. To where on it now, you got kids who want to start and just want to jump straight to trend without even figuring out what progressive overload is.
Yeah, and I think about that I don't know why, but I think about that fairly often, about like the access to information, what it means, because like we have like the entirety of human knowledge is right in here, on my phone.
Yep.
And it's like, what does that mean? Why am I not better, than I am knowing that?
True.
And I think like I play the guitar, and I like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I used to. I mean, that was like what got me into it. And he didn't read music, and there were no tabs, and there were no internet, And so when he wanted to learn a song, he just had to listen to it 37 million times until he figured it out on his own, and he didn't know musical theory or any, but over, if you play pool, Efren Bata Reyes, you guys I don't know, play pool. That's my new obsession is billiards is pool. Nice. I get obsessed with things because there's always like that curve where you practice and you get better. And then you reach a point where it takes a lot of work to get better. And that's kind of where I lose interest. But, right. But he didn't know, he did everything wrong, and he's the best pool player ever. Like, not even really arguably anymore, but he just played. He just said he played 1 million rounds of pool. He said you just hit every shot possible 1,000 times. You learn, and it's like Steve Ray Vaughan, like you don't. There's something about earning that guitar ability where it's not easy, but by the time you learn it, like you don't even know what a pentatonic scale is. You don't even know the blues scale or minor pentatonic, but by the time you learn these songs and you learn a couple hundred songs, you're playing these scales and you're playing in the right key. You don't know why, but you've just played so much that you've learned it. And by that point, you've internalized it, and you own the music. Where now like you can go on and you can download the guitar tab for any song ever made. And it's just and I still like the what guys are doing with the guitar now is just absolutely unbelievable. But it's not. It's just technically amazing now. It's not. I don't like. I watch these guys just because it's like, wow, I could never play that. But I don't like the music, and I think it's because
there's like less soul.
Yeah. You don't earn it. Like
rawness to it.
Yeah, there's something about like when you get like little bits of information. Like I remember Powerlifting USA would come out like 4 times a year, and they'd get like local GNC would get like 2 of them, and so. There's probably like 4 of us in the city who wanted it, and so like when it got around April, when I knew or March or April or whatever, I would go to the mall and run by GNC to check, and then if there was one, I'd grab it. And you got no information on powerlifting, and then all you saw was like the one workout they showed in there, and then the results from like the US Open or whatever that happened recently, and you'd like study it and but like the little bit you got, you had to by the time you actually understood anything, you really knew it. Where now you can go watch, you could watch 3,000 hours of deadlift tutorials and not even get through a fraction of the deadlift tutorial videos on YouTube right now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Almost a point of diminishing returns with too much information, I guess.
Yeah, and it goes back to this, think of all the amazing thinkers throughout history that didn't have this, and we have every thought they've had right here, and none of us know anything.
Yeah,
and maybe there's something about just like jumping into something for yourself and figuring it out. The organic way is probably it feels a lot different.
That's the way you own it. Because you don't. It's like when the teacher does it, because like physics, like when I went to math and physics, the teacher would solve this really hard problem on the board, and it makes sense when they're doing it. It's like, oh yeah, makes perfect sense. You go back to your room, and you're like, what was this? How the fuck did you make this? But when you if you spend 6 hours doing it yourself and you work through all the issues and you find out, okay, this didn't work, and then I know why that didn't work, and this did work, and I learned why. By the time you actually get to the end result, you've internalized it and you own it. You didn't memorize something, or you learned it, and you know it forever. Like that. Yeah. Like Steve Ray Vaughan might not. He didn't know how to read music, but you start playing a song, he'd be like, okay, that's the key of A. I'll play here. and and he's playing like the A minor scale, minor pentatonic, or blues scale, and he's and he would know when he could get like a little accent note slightly outside of there, and when it would work and when it was acceptable, because certain accent notes will like add tension to this, and he didn't know any of those things. He didn't study theory. He just knew, like, I accidentally played this wrong note at this part of the, one of the 10 trillion times I played this song, I accidentally played this wrong note at this point, and it kind of sounded right. It kind of sounds, it's added a little stress to, so, it's different than just like when you learn the theory and it's like, well, if you are, in the second bar of the, the fourth, whatever, you can add a minor fifth and it'll add a little bit of lightness to the, that it's like, like someone taught me that, but I don't know it. I didn't earn it.
Yeah, I see that all the time at the gym. And like you said, with like Kuklo, like walking in, like, I heard you got to do protein or something, it's like, this kid already looks like a bodybuilder and he like doesn't even know what supplementing with protein is. And then nowadays I'll be at the gym and there's a kid with like 145 on the bench with a fractional plate and a notebook out. And I'm like, cool. Like, at least you're understanding, progressive overload, but you're missing a piece of that, just like loading up way too much weight with other dudes and pushing yourself to an extreme, and like you grow in that, it's there's
like,
got to
be learn more. Yeah, well, you learn more. Really, if you think about it, you learn more like from failures than you do from successes. And when you have all the information handed to you, all you get are the successes. So you don't learn anything.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting. I never even have thought about that, but yeah, that's probably another issue with just this mass, all the information, at our fingertips. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, with the steroids too, it's now that everybody talks about it, everybody thinks so. And my biggest gripe being like at a TRT clinic is that now everybody just lies under the guise of TRT, where at least before they just lied under the guise of cell tech. I joke saying that TRT is our generation now's like new cell tech, where, because they just say I'm on TRT and I'm like, that's such bullshit. Like, this motherfucker's not on TRT. Like, TRT is your dad who now can, play a full game of golf. That's TRT. Yeah. Like, these motherfuckers are on a ton of gear and they're lying to you because they're sponsored by certain, TRT clinic.
Yeah. Well, I would say to some extent, because like we talked about Fuad earlier, if you've been 300 pounds, that's another thing. Like someone will see someone like Fuad and they'll be like, he's 250 pounds. There's no way he's on TRT. It's like, he lost 50 pounds of muscle, he's still 250
pounds. I'm
talking
but more like,
get there, he
lost the 20 something, like the 20 something year old kids who are just, ripped. And I'm like, he's not just on TRT.
No. Yeah. And that's I never understood, I never understood that. Here's why I never understood that. It's like, because you're not, you're obviously very interested in the sport. You're on the internet, you're on social media, like putting yourself out there as an ambassador of the sport or whatever. But you're not winning Mr. Olympia, and you're like, so if you really are only on TRT, then like, what is the point then? Because, why not just take a little more and be the best bodybuilder that ever existed? Think how many followers you'd have then, It's like, that always seemed the dumbest to me, because it's like, well, that's great and all, but really, if you are only on TRT, then you're just an idiot, because you're trying to be a professional bodybuilder. You're trying to make this your career, where if you just, nudge that up a little bit, you'd be making millions of dollars and have 7 million followers, and you'd be Rich Piana.
Yeah.
So it's like, really, you're just saying you're an idiot. I mean, in two different ways.
The things I just don't like is like, a kid who has a 500 testosterone and they think that TRT will somehow make them look like that. And I'm like, I think we would probably all agree, as you said, your testosterone is 300 and you're holding on to a decent amount of muscle. Like, within a normal physiologic range of testosterone, there's not a lot of difference. So a 500 versus an 800, the marginal amount of increased gain, I would argue it's not even there. So unless you're going to go all the way and shut down your system for an actual flow-blown cycle, it's stupid to go on TRT and shut down your system when you're at a normal level.
Yeah, I agree. And I see that so much, like the younger kids want to do that now. And it's like, your natural test is probably 700. Why you could have ruined that to make it 700 on artificially?
Yep.
I don't get it.
It's it's like the, like you said, like the difference between 500 and 800, there's how you look is going to have, there's a much bigger variance that's going to be based on your diet and training, like a guy that's doing, and genetics, obviously, but even people with the same genetics one person's training harder and dieting better, and their test levels are 500. The next person's, training like shit and dieting like shit, and their test level could be 1500, and they're not going to be as impressive. I mean, obviously, all things being equal, if it's higher and you're doing everything perfect, you're probably going to carry more muscle mass, but things are never equal, and people never stop to think that.
Exactly. So when, let's see,
it's kind of like a don't touch the stove analogy. Like maybe I just got to let you touch it to figure this out on your own.
Sometimes it's red for a reason. You can
figure
exactly.
it out. So when a guy goes and does kind of dabble for his first time, like you, I mean, you had an amazing response. Like you said, I really didn't. And I kind of wish I would have heard a podcast like this first, where like, no, I didn't get those amazing results that I thought that I would. Like at that point, what would you tell a guy? Like, hey, maybe this isn't just for, like, if you haven't exploded and gained a significant amount, like.
That's so hard. Yeah. It's so hard because I never know what to say because I mean, everyone's been in that situation where they really, really want something. It's hard to know that it's not in the cards for you. I wanted to be a football player. I was a late bloomer. I didn't get any offers. I didn't really like hit puberty like my senior year. By the time offers are over, I ended up going to Division III school. I was a 2-time All-American, 2000 preseason Street and Smith's Player of the Year. But I would have cut off a testicle, anything to like play one game in the pros. I was as obsessed with. I loved football. I felt like I was a student of the game. I was just absolutely. But I played like defensive end, almost like a Lawrence Taylor position, and I was fast for my, especially for Division III. But I'm 5'10". There's no defense. There's no rush end under 6'5" in the NFL. And it's like it sucks, but. Sometimes things are the way they are, like I would have loved to do that, but there was, it's, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say to it, but
I know, me neither.
Like there's some things you can do. You can do anything, but there's only to a certain level, and it's like, it's hard to, because it's not good to accept your limitations in that, like, because you don't want to put limitations on yourself because most people can always achieve more, and you don't want to limit yourself artificially, but you do have to have some level of self-analysis and self-assessment and know, like, when you're blasting over a gram of gear and you're 148 pounds, like, where do you go?
Yeah.
The thing with me, I think, is like, if you're a kid who wants to play basketball and you don't have the genetics, you're only 5'6" and stuff, it's not going to hurt you if you're out there killing it on the courts every day and you have a pipe dream. Like, fucking go get it, dude. Follow your dreams and don't let anybody tell you no. From a doctor's standpoint, like myself, I have a hard time telling somebody like, go chase bodybuilding with all your might, even though you're never going to make anything out of yourself, because you're really going to hurt your health, and that's the thing. That's the only. Other than that, I love chasing a dream. I love an underdog, fucking going against the odds. I just hate that it's not a benign sport in any way. It does come with a lot of risk.
Yeah, and more than like peripheral risks or tertiary risks you wouldn't even think of, because it takes so long to become a pro bodybuilder. So you can it's a decade or more, even for the ones who have it, and so you can waste your 20s and half your 30s chasing this dream before you are forced to accept it. And then when you're 35 and you realize there's zero chance of becoming a pro, and I don't have a career, I don't have any investments, like I've got nothing for retirement, I've got nothing for any kids I have, I've got, I'm now I've accepted this and I'm starting out in whatever, and like, not that you got to accept the corporate world or whatever. And I went the business route, but realizing in your mid 30s that you're where everyone else was at age 18. And that's, I think one of the worst things is like, cause if you, like, for me, like I want to play football. Well, my dreams were shattered when I graduated college, the same time everyone's dreams were shattered, so it was, I started out at the same point everyone else. And my dreams were shattered, but I didn't miss them, any years. Where if I would have like kept doing that and I got to age 35 and realized I couldn't play pro football, then that would have been several years ago. And I wouldn't have anything I have, like the beautiful home I have, or the family I have, or the career I have, or I think that's one of the biggest things, because because to achieve anything in the sport, it has to be all encompassing. And so all these kids put all their eggs in that basket. And then when it doesn't work out, that's like you got no home to store your basket in.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to your point, Adam, you've probably done some long-term damage to your health too. So it's a combo of both those things. You get to 35 with nothing to show for, and have probably taken a few years off your life on top of that.
Nothing to show for, but a glomerular filtration rate of 48 or something. Great. Good. This is
and then
and a scary CT angiogram.
Yeah.
The most guys that are doing this stuff, I don't think are even thinking that they want to be a pro bodybuilder. They just want to look decent. And then I'm like, dude, you can really look very, very good with very minimal. And I think that it's fine to do the occasional low dose things safe. I mean, I would certainly argue that it's safer for a guy to do a low dose testosterone and primo than it is to be drinking every day and smoking, etc.
Sure.
You know? Yeah. So yeah, that's fine. And you will look better than 99% of the population with that lower dose stuff. You don't need to follow what the pros are doing just because you want to look good on the beach.
Yeah. And you can look gross on that, like people don't realize, like we look at the pros, like, like that's what, like, even if you don't want to be a pro, like you maybe not pro bodybuilders, but you're looking like pro, like the CBum, classic physique, or you're looking at like these extremes, it's like, if you even look like that, like what you're like, whatever you're doing it for, to get girls or whatever, they're going to think you can look gross to the opposite sex on those low, like, you go to the beach and look around, because we get twisted because we have in our mind like what we want to look like and what we see on social media. Like, go to the beach, because I'm in that phase now. Like I'm like, because to me, I'm a fat middle-aged man, but like right. I'll make a joke and my kids will like almost be like annoyed, it's like, because I don't look like like their friend's 45-year-old dad, obviously. Like I don't look like when I was a 275-pound bodybuilder, but I don't look like a fat old man. But you can,
No, yeah. So I think that it's just good to hear kind of the realistic, the true aspect of things coming from the person who's actually been on the inside. And you don't have to chase this really unhealthy obsession to do things that way. And it's awesome that we had you on. Don't want to keep you too much longer. Where can kind of people find you?
Probably the easiest is just searching Justin Harris bodybuilding, but you can go to troponinnutrition.com or firstdetachment.com. It's 1st detachment.com, or anyway you spell it, it'll take you there, but or teamtroponin.com. Okay. And then the troponin, unfortunately, was like 20 some years ago on message boards. I either went by troponin or tropomyosin. And so like when muscle contracts, calcium rushes into a cell and binds to troponin, which moves troponin off tropomyosin, which allows the myosin and actin cross-bridge heads to make a muscular contraction. I just thought it was a cool word. And I went, either like some boards I was tropomyosin, some I was troponin, but the main ones like Intense Muscle and Muscle Mayhem, I was troponin. And that's what most people knew me as. And so when I started coaching more and more people, and I told my wife, I was like, man, I should do this. Could be something, because there weren't online coaches back then. And I'm like, I got a lot of people. Like, I should create like a website or something. And so we made Troponin Nutrition, which, to people who, some people, they view it as heart attack nutrition.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh God, I didn't like. So I used to always have a big disclaimer on my homepage explaining what troponin really is. But yeah, so if you search for troponin, you're either going to find stuff about how to survive a heart attack, how to deal with your recent heart attack, or you might see me. But
that's funny. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I remember. Probably seeing you on Professional Muscle, I think was a forum that I used to hang out on a lot, and seeing the troponin through there. Yeah. And I thought there was some I thought it was maybe, I don't know, just being funny or something like.
No. I mean, only people like who would go through medical school really would, or the only people who know are people who go through in the medical field or have had a heart attack. So most people don't know, luckily. But yeah, like I kicked myself. And then also like, what's your email address? Oh, it's justin@troponinnutrition.com. And like, I'm like, TROPONIN. There's two N's in the middle. Troponin ends with an N. Nutrition start. Wait. There's two N's in it. It's like the worst. So if I could go back and change anything, I would have gone back and picked a different name than heart attack nutrition. But
It's cool. Can normal just guys like lifestyle guys contact you
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
plans?
And I almost prefer that. I'll work with anyone who wants to work hard. I mean, I am not one of those people who like, you got to meet certain criteria. And most of my most enjoyable clients over the years were not those people, because bodybuilders are so. I'll work with bodybuilders, and actually, I got two people competing in the Toronto Pro, Joe Seaman in the men's bodybuilding, and then Renee Nasser in women's physique. So I'll work with, but all I care about is that you want to work hard. That's it. That's all I care about. If you want to, and you want to work with me, I would much rather someone who really wants to work with me, who's no aspirations of competing. You might even have like health issues. And because I have a clinical background, my first job was as a nutritionist for a cardiology group. I did exercise physiology, and I was their nutritionist. And then I did echocardiograms also. And so I still, and from that, I still have 20 years later, just from word of mouth, about 10% of my clients are still like carryover word of mouth of people with congestive heart failure, or recent heart issues or heart attacks, or I got a lot of like SIBO or Candida or Crohn's type patients, but about 10% of my clients are still word of mouth carryovers from when I was a nutritionist clinically 20 years ago. But that's all.
Cool.
If you want to work with me, then it means more. Like if your friend says you should work with this guy and you don't know who I am, and what I say means nothing and it carries no weight with you, you're not a good client. If you want to work with me, I don't care if you compete. I don't care if anything. I want people who are motivated and want to work with me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. And then the new line is the supplements, right?
Yeah. First attachment 1B. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm not excited about that. I always said I would never do supplements. I mean, I am excited, but mostly because coaching, I don't think people realize how much money there is to be made in coaching, but there's a lot of money to be made in coaching, because you can handle several hundred clients and you could charge, $400 a month. And so you only make money when you're typing at a keyboard, so one, it's basically like an extremely high paying factory job. And two, I have a family, like that business dies with me, and there's nothing if something happens to me. And so I always said I would never do a supplement company, because there's two ways to start a supplement company. The way most of them do is you get someone with a lot of money who wants to because what happens a lot is people with a lot of money, they get into bodybuilding or they get into working out for whatever reason. They've been an executive and they're older and they're in their 40s or 50s. And then I see this all the time, and they start working out and they befriend like a local bodybuilder and they get really into bodybuilding for a while. And what most supplement companies are is they'll fund the company, because it's expensive. You're several $100,000 out before any product is ever available for sale, because you got to order them. It's 8 to 10 weeks after you pay before you even have the product, and then it takes months to sell it. But they'll find someone like that. They'll write themselves a big fat CEO salary until the company goes bankrupt 5 years later. And you can think of all the companies that have been out, especially when a pro or a former pro is associated. You can think of all the companies that come out, pop out. I don't want to say names because it's not their fault. It's whoever was funding it. And they're around for 2, 3, 4 years before the guy's finally like, look, I'm losing $300,000 a year. I'm out. Or you can design really like supplements for a reason, like purposeful supplements, run a lean company, and write yourself $0 salary for several years, which is where we're at. But we're growing very quickly. We're doing very well. We're working on getting in GNC. We're on Walmart's website now, working on getting Walmart shelves.
Nice.
We grew, I think we're 270% year over year right now from last year.
Massive.
40% growth this past month. We're averaging between about 25 and 40% growth month over month, which is awesome, but sucks when your lead time on products is 8 to 10 weeks, because trying to manage supply chain when you're growing anywhere from 20 to 50% per month, and you have 3 months from when you order a product before you can start selling it, trying to decide how much to order, because you also you don't have the money for it, because you haven't sold that product yet. And so, but it's doing very well. We're going to make it. It looks like we've had our biggest month ever this month. So, which has been our biggest
Awesome.
month ever. It's been every month basically for the last 8 months. So
That's great, man. Yeah, Josh and I will have to try some of your stuff soon. Did your I heard you talking about your glucose disposal agent. Is that out yet or still in the works?
oh man, we just did the label for it. And I want to say what's in it because
cool.
because it's based around berberine, and everyone
Right.
always says, why don't you use dihydroberberine? And that's what everyone's kind of going to, because dihydroberberine has a higher bioavailability. And I always, like, my thing that I've said for years is no one reads the studies. You know, like whenever someone's arguing about something on the internet and they link a study, at least 50% of the time that study debunks what their argument is, but no one reads. Research studies are a pain in the butt to read. Well, I read the studies, and if you read them, you'll read that yes, dihydroberberine is more bioavailable, but it doesn't improve blood glucose levels compared to berberine alone for whatever reason, you know, because that still has to get converted to berberine before it can go through the cascade reaction with IGF-1 to lower glucose levels. And for whatever reason, yes, it seems to be more bioavailable, but it doesn't. If you read the whole study and get past that point, you'll see that test subjects don't show improved blood glucose. However, there are things you can add that I don't want to say too much of because I don't want a bigger company that can produce it quicker, but we're almost through production. There are things that you can add that increases the effectiveness of berberine, and actually where blood glucose levels are lowered between 20 and 22.5% between the 3 main studies. Yeah, so a pretty marked increase, because the cost won't be 25% higher and the dose won't be 25% higher, and we'll be the only one that has it. And we just finished the label design today, so we're getting ready. But I'm super excited about it because in my experience, suppressor, which is our glucose disposal agent, or really about 1,500 milligrams of berberine, which is what we have in it, but we have other ingredients also. But I have found it to be about equally as effective as metformin at lowering 1,000 milligrams per day of metformin at lowering blood sugar. And I actually have a type 2 diabetic right now, Steele Monville, who he just showed me his before and after pictures, and I forgot how much progress he made. Whose blood glucose, he's had several days where his fasted glucose was under 90, where I think he had an A1C of 7 when we started.
Wow.
And now his blood glucose fasted is consistently under 100. His A1C is in the 5s, and that's just with suppressor. And so with this new product, I really believe, and the data suggests that it will be more effective than 1,000 milligrams of metformin. And for what we do is even better, because metformin works with cyclic AMP, which is like anti-hypertrophy. You know, and if you're on 2 grams of gear a week, that doesn't matter. You know, like nothing matters at that point. But it is counter to hypertrophy, where berberine's different. Berberine works through IGF-1, so berberine can actually improve rates of hypertrophy. So if we have something that's more effective at lowering blood glucose than 1,000 milligrams per day of metformin, and instead of being counter hypertrophy, it actually increases your rates of muscle growth. I'm super excited about it. We're hoping
when that comes out, we'll have to get you on and talk about it.
Yeah, early this summer. We were hoping for June. I don't know if we'll have it through production in June, but it'll be this summer for sure.
Awesome. Have you found some people have just can't tolerate it from a GI standpoint? Berberine in general? Yeah.
Not really. Not nearly as bad as metformin. I mean, metformin's almost 100% of people struggle at least initially with GI issues and appetite issues. But yeah, with suppressor, I have almost zero. And I'll read online every once in a while, someone will say it caused issues, but I've never had we've had 0 complaints, and I've never had a client complaint that and no issues with appetite, no reduction in appetite. And I think part of the reason is if you're using it properly, you're dosing it multiple times a day. That's the only downside, is that metformin you can just take once a day. For berberine to work properly, you need to take it spread out multiple times throughout the day. And so,
what's crazy is I've never had an issue with metformin, not even the first time I took it. Never. Wow. Berberine, I had like a insane allergic reaction causing like insane vomiting and diarrhea. I'll have to try your brand.
I'm curious. You can say, you don't have to say it on air, but off here, I'm curious what brand, because
I can't remember. I'll have to find it.
Because there's someone, I think it was not someone, it was Dante Trudell, I believe, had independent lab assays done on a wide variety of berberine brands, and the results were insane. None of them met anywhere close to the berberine amounts. And a lot of them had weird ingredients that the only one that I think it was, I don't want to even say because I don't want to, one of the big names was one of the worst. And one of the other big names was the only one that met label claim. And I believe it was Vitamin Shop that met label claim, but I don't want to say that because Vitamin Shop might've been the one that was the worst, but, but if you search Dante's stuff enough, you can find, but yeah. And that's the other thing with our stuff is we do, you know, our own quality control, but then we do, before anything gets shipped to our warehouse, it goes to a third party independent testing. And because I just, after 20 years in the sport and I worked too hard to build up a reputation, I won't, at the risk that someone else does their own third party testing, I won't ship a product to warehouse until it's claimed.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, yeah, I'm excited to hear about that. And it was awesome to get to talk to you. I think people will really enjoy this. It's very eye-opening and gets to shine some light on the industry and what's really going on.
Thanks. Yeah, that went fast.
Yeah.
I didn't no idea that was an hour and a half. That flew by.
It was quick. It's fun. All right, guys. Well, check out Justin at his stuff. We'll link all that below and get some of that. What's it going to be called? Or can you not say yet?
It'll be just Suppressor Max.
Okay, cool. All right. Get some Suppressor Max when that comes out.
And I can tell you off air what it is, but
sure. Oh, yeah. We're going to end this now, and we will see you guys next time.